Okay, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. I see there's still more people joining us as we kick off, but let's get going. So for those of you who are new to the training, my name is Helen Dallas from the Freshwater Research Centre, and it's great to be with you today. And today we'll be going through the third session. I'll be doing it with my colleague, Jeremy Shelton, who's been very involved in the development of FBIS from the get-go. So the format we've had for the last few sessions, which has been fairly successful, is we start just with a very brief opportunity. If anyone's got any burning issues from the previous sessions, just to allow you an opportunity to ask a question or two. After that, we'll launch into the first session, which is on layers today. And thereafter, we'll be opening it up for just questions and answers. So if you can, as always, just keep yourselves on mute. If you want to ask a question, pop a hand up or type a question at any point in the chat. And then between Jeremy and I, we'll work through those after we've finished with the pre-recorded tutorial for the day. And as always, they are recorded. So if you unfortunately were unable to attend the previous ones, or you're not going to attend future ones for being in the field, for example, you always have the opportunity to catch up down the line. And these will become a resource going forward for everybody to use. So just before we go any further, are there any folks who were at previous sessions who've had issues related to like the first few tutorials, which was an introduction or the filtering that you're really keen to ask? I'll just give it 30 seconds. Just put your hand up. That'll be the easiest. And if there are no questions, we'll move on to the first recording. Okay, it looks like everyone's happy. Got 63 of us in the room so far, so that's great. As always, it's very heartwarming to see the interest in the FBIS system. And for those of you who are joining for the first time, welcome. What I am going to do now is to share my screen. And just firstly, move over to just to let us know where we are in the whole training scheme. So those of you who attended the first session, was an introduction to FBIS. The second session was on filtering data. And today we'll be diving into an overview of layers, spatial layers, which are used for visualizing the data.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the third tutorial in the FBIS training series. Today, our focus is going to be on spatial layers. You'll probably remember from the first tutorial that we had a brief look at the spatial layers using this tab here. And in the second tutorial, we familiarized ourselves with the different filtering options, of which there is quite a substantial list of spatial filtering options. Now, just to remind you that these spatial filters are a subset of the layers that we're going to be looking at in today's tutorial. So some of the spatial layers that we'll look at are purely for visualization purposes, but others are also available as spatial filters in the filter tab. So by opening the layer selector tab, you can see all the different spatial layers that are available for visualizing data on the FBIS platform. Now, there are a few really cool features of this layer tab that I'd like to walk you through today. So the default on FBIS is that the sites layer and the rivers layer are selected, which you can see on the map here. The rivers are all shown in blue for South Africa, and the sites are shown in yellow. But there are a wealth of other layers that aren't turned on by default, but that can be activated to aid the search and to also help create the desired visual map that can be then downloaded using the print map icon here on the left. All right, so just a quick walkthrough of the different layers available on the FBIS. There's a protected areas layer, which gives all the protected areas for South Africa. There are water resource areas. There are dams for South Africa, geomorphological zones, which are also a filter. There are freshwater ecoregions of the world, water management areas, subwater management areas, river management units, and then the different levels of catchment from primary through quinary. There are the two different levels of ecoregion. There are national critical biodiversity areas. There are the INFIPA layers that can be visualized. There are the national ecological support areas, fish sanctuaries and other FIPA layers, the ground water source areas, LADA land use classes, hydrological regions, also by flow type, and the thermal framework layers. And you will also notice that next to each of the layers, there's a little blue information button. And clicking on that opens up a tab below the layer, which includes details about the layer, where it comes from, what data are included in the layer, etc. So if you have any doubt about what layer it is you're working with, it's that little blue info button that will helpfully give you the answer to that. All right. So the first step in using the layer selector is turning layers on and off. And this is really, really simple. This is just done by clicking that layer, and clicking it automatically turns that layer on. And what you'll notice here is that if we maybe zoom into one particular area, let's zoom into this area here, close to the Roodepoort Dam. For those of you that don't know, if you hold Shift and use your mouse or your touchpad, you can zoom in to a particular part of the map. So here we can see the protected area layer of South Africa shown in these different colored polygons, but you can also see the sites and rivers, or the rivers and then the sites in that order on top of the protected areas layer. And the order in which the layers are shown actually corresponds to the order that they are shown in the layer selector. So for example, you can actually select and drag layers up and down depending on which layer you'd like to have on the top and which layer you'd like to have on the bottom of your map view. So for example, if I drag the sites layer down below protected areas, we'll no longer see the sites over that protected area. They'll be under that protected area polygon. So let me drag that back up. And similarly, the rivers could be dragged down and then they'll disappear from that protected area because they're now being shown underneath it. All right. What you can also do on the map interface when a layer is selected is actually just click on that layer, and that'll give you some basic information about that layer in a little pop-up that comes up. And this, it gives you the layer name, and then it just gives you attributes for that layer as well. And these will vary depending on the layer of interest. But yeah, it just gives you breakdown of key attributes, for example, the date, the name, etc. All right. So another useful tip when using the layer selector is you can adjust the opacity of a layer. So if we activated another layer, for example, the strategic water sources of South Africa, as well as protected areas, and then use the little minus button at the top here to zoom out in our map, we now have two different layers selected. Water source areas, as well as protected areas. So if we again zoom into a part of our map, let's say the Cape Peninsula and Greater Cape Town area, we can see that this might look a little confusing, but if I toggle the water source areas on and off, you can see that these two layers are actually being shown one on top of another. Once again, if I slide the water source areas layer up, then it'll be shown on top of the protected areas. So I'll drag that down again. And yeah, another useful tool is to you are able to adjust the opacity of the different layers on FBIS. So say you may want to see your protected areas layer, but still see what other layers are available underneath it. Then you can use this opacity slider to reduce that opacity. And in particular, if I zoomed in on this little area here, you can see underneath this protected areas layer, the Haverkras Mountain catchment area, protected area, that there is also this pink water source area, the Boerland strategic water source area underneath it. And that's where the layer opacity adjustments become really, really useful. And another useful tip when you have more than one layer selected is the ability to toggle between the information tabs for the two different layers. So if you had to click at a part of the map where the two layers intersect, then you can see first up comes the protected areas layer and the attributes for that layer, because that's the top layer. But underneath that is the strategic water source areas, in this case, the surface layer. And you can then toggle into that to access the data for that layer as well. And finally, if one was to zoom out and if you wanted to print this map view showing all of these sites, your two layers that you've selected, maybe with an opacity adjustment, you could then just quickly go to the print map button and that'll print your map and save it as a file on your machine. So that's it for the tutorial on the layer selector. And in the next tutorial, we're going to start looking at the dashboards, the different kinds of dashboards that can be used to further explore the biodiversity data. Thanks very much and see you next time.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. So let's dive right in, open it up for some questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now, and we can always open it up again if there are any questions specifically around that require me to go into the FBIS system and share my screen again. Okay, folks, this is your time. Jem, do you want to sort of just go through the chats like we did previously? I think it worked quite well. Then everyone gets to hear the question and we can then chat it through. Actually, Mark's got his hand up, so let's start with Mark. Please have the floor. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Just a quick one. You've got lots of very interesting layers there that you can superimpose and try and see what's happening with regards to the points. I'm assuming it's only visual. There's no sort of analysis to say so many points in this layer and that layer together. So yeah, the question is, can you do any analysis with the layers, or would you do that on a GIS system on your computer at home? Thanks.
Excellent question, Mark. At this stage, it's literally just visualizing. There's no, like within QGIS or ArcView, the ability to analyze the intersection. But yeah, on our wish list for future. Since the developer of FBIS is also one of the founders of QGIS, you never know, maybe possible.
And Helen, we have a question in the chat from Daksha, who asks whether it's possible to import the map with layers rather than print the map. Maybe Dashka wants to. It might be nice to get a bit more clarity on that. Dashka, if you want to just turn your mic on.
I don't know if Daksha can unmute. We can't hear you. Otherwise, okay, don't have a mic. So at the moment, there's no ability to import a layer that's not served in FBIS. We as a group decide in collaboration with partners the priority layers that we serve on the FBIS. And whilst there are already about 20, these will obviously always be added to going down the line. Those of you at last week's sessions know that the National Wetland Map is currently being worked on very intensively by the SANBI group. And once that's been finalized and released formally from SANBI, we will be integrating that into FBIS. So these layers that we offer will continually grow over time. But for now, you can't import a layer onto FBIS that's one of your own. But again, it is something we have thought of in the past, that if you have a specific layer you'd want to customize or bring in for yourself, perhaps we need to be addressing that. But at the moment, the answer is no. You can only look at the layers that are currently served. Thanks, Daksha. Hope that answers your question. Thumbs up if it has. Jim?
All right. Daksha says thanks. So I think that did address that question. Thanks, Helen. Astrid asks a question that I think has been raised a few times now through this series. So maybe there is a real user need for this, but whether it's possible to import any layer you want, and if so, what format should the layer be in?
Yeah, it's kind of linked to Daksha's question. And it has, like you mentioned, Jem, been raised in the past, where you might have a specific shape file, for example. It might not even be a whole layer. It might just be a shape file that you want to upload of your particular area and then do queries based on that. So the short answer is, at the moment, no, it's not possible to do it, but we have it on our wish list, and pending funding availability, we will prioritize that, because it's come up several times now. Thanks, Astrid. Nice to have you here today.
Erica van Rooyen asks whether it's possible to export a JPEG file, an image file of the map. And Helen, as far as I know at the moment, the option is to print the map, so that would be exporting it to a PDF. I see that functionality there's a bug with that at the moment, so we've logged a ticket for that, so hopefully that gets fixed up. But I'm not sure if there is a way to export an image file of the map with your layers.
Yeah, I think at the moment it's literally just as you said, Jen, the PDF. But that being said, you know, you've got that, depending on which software thing you use, you've got the option. I use, I've gone blank now, but my one, if I right click, can you all see my screen? I can do a screenshot, and then I can actually just take an image shot of whatever I want, copy it, and that then becomes a pastable JPEG image. So that's kind of a workaround, depending on your system that you use for the internet.
I think, Helen, it's probably a nice bit of functionality to add. I mean, I think it'll become clear as we go into the dashboards in the upcoming tutorials that there are options to download most of the outputs as image files, whether it's a graph or a table or a map. But we just actually don't have that functionality for this base map. So I think it's probably something worth adding, and yeah, I'm happy to add that to our to-do list. Shouldn't be too tricky.
Agreed. I think it'll be very useful, not just to be able to print the map, but be able to save it as a JPEG or in maybe a few SVG, different types of formats. Thanks for that suggestion.
Yep. All right, so zooming out a little bit, Anna Barnard asks an interesting question, which is whether or not there are plans to expand the database beyond South Africa into Africa. And he's particularly thinking about West Africa and Central Africa, but I think, yep, the continent in general.
Great question, and it's one that the team at FRC have been very much chewing on, and our vision is definitely to try and expand it beyond the border of South Africa. In my intro session 2 weeks ago, I did mention that we've already rolled out versions for Rwanda and for Botswana. But we are hoping to be able to get some follow-on grant funding from potentially the JRS to develop an Africa-wide kind of scaled-down version of FBIS. For now, there isn't that information, but going forward, we would love it to become a resource used beyond the borders of South Africa, because there's a very, excuse me, a very strong use case for that. So thank you. We will put it on our target list. We're making a list of all the issues raised by everyone who attends these sessions, and we will be using it to guide current and future enhancements and projects indeed going forward. So thank you.
Helen, we've got a question from Sachin Pillay that's come up, but I think it might be worth just going back to Erica's question. It was a nice simple request, can you export an image file of the map? And I see that we probably have some people on the call this week that weren't here last week, and I think it might just be worth showing how it's quite easy for a user to log a feature request using the platform itself.
Good idea. Sure, let's do that. Okay, so let me just move this up because, okay, can everyone see my screen all right?
Looks good.
Okay, so on the bottom right of your screen, wherever you are, whether you're zoomed in or whether you're on a dashboard, there's this sort of bubble with like a note, as if you're talking. If you click on that, you'll have the option to provide feedback directly to, this actually goes to the GitHub repository, which is, we work with our developers, Cortosa, and you have the option to either report a bug. So if something's not working, you would report a bug, or if you would like a feature request, you would do that. And so, for example, let's capture right now the feature request for the ability to create a JPEG. So we'll say it would be useful to create a JPEG file from the print map option. Actually, sorry, that's actually the description. So let me rather put it there. The summary would be create a JPEG from print map. I'll expand on this a little bit more, but just for the purposes of today. So it's a feature request. We want to be able to, we'd love to be able to create not only print the map, but to create a JPEG or save as a JPEG file, and then some detail around that. And then you will submit it. That then goes to our FBIS GitHub repository, which is a way where developers and the FRC work together. And in that way, you can ask for feature requests and or report a bug if something's not working. Okay, so please feel free to use that. We then go and look at it as the FRC team, and we escalate it to our developers. If it's a bug, it immediately gets addressed. And if it's a feature request, we obviously have to prioritize these because we can't necessarily do everything, but we will prioritize and, if possible, action that enhancement. Perfect. Thanks.
Sachin Pillay asks whether there's any potential for adding vegetation records as well. such as threatened plants that are recorded along wetlands or in riparian zones.
Okay, Sashin, thanks for the question. So at the moment, plants are not yet included in FBIS, but that is indeed the next obligate wetland plants are the next module to be added. And thereafter, we're hoping to be able to bring in riparian plants. The workflows, which we will chat through in the next few series, you will note that you've got to have a master list of species before data can be added. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist in FBIS, you can't add it. So plants are not yet included, but watch this space. It is going to be something that will be included before the end of the second phase of FBIS. Thanks.
All right, a few more questions coming through in the chat. I can see that Astrid's been testing the maps and she's getting an error message when trying to print the map. And yeah, Astrid, that's a bug that we've picked up, and we've logged a ticket for that. So hopefully that gets sorted out shortly. And she also said there's a problem adding some third-party layers to the map. I'm not sure which layers you are having an issue with there, Astrid. Maybe you want to just turn on your mic and
yeah,
let us know.
Hi everyone. I have
Hi.
the protected areas and the freshwater ecoregions of the world. So it was these two that I tried.
Okay.
And what was the problem you were experiencing?
No, it was that I pressed the print button and then it says, sorry, we are unable to print your map. There was a problem adding some third-party layers to the map. Please try another base map or another layer to reload the page. So,
yeah, that is the bug that we picked up. It's one of these things that was working and then it stopped working. So
okay.
I think
sounds
it's
familiar.
Yeah, you know what it's like with information systems. So, you know, we've prioritized it to be fixed. So you can visualize the data, obviously, but not able at this stage to print. But I think that's regardless of whichever layer is selected. It's just, it's a temporary hiccup in the system.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks.
More on the topic of printing the map. There's obviously, you know, an interest for this functionality. And the question from Erica van Rooyen is, can you print the map at different scales? And as far as I understand, you can zoom in and zoom out on the map using the plus and minus buttons at the top of the search bar, and the print map will export a PDF of your view. So
exactly. Yeah.
I guess the short answer is yes, you can print it at different scales. A question from Daniela Molinar is, she'd also like it exported as a JPEG.
Okay.
So it's easy to, so that we can easily import to GIS package and add our own data over it. All right. Oh, okay. Erica's is asking about a scale bar as well on the map, and the FBIS base map does have a scale bar in the bottom left of the map. Should be there, and that should give you, that should be included in the print map as well, as far as I know.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the scale bar is. So remember this map is kind of, it's not, FBIS isn't replacing QGIS, you know, where you've got all of those bells and whistles or any of the priority software spatial mapping functions. So we've included the function to print a map, or hopefully in future save it as a JPEG or PNG, but there isn't the full on, I don't think there's a scale bar. You do have a legend here that you can turn on and off, and you can obviously turn on your layers on and off. So you can get it to the extent that you want it. Where is the scale bar, Jim, that you think is here? I can't see it.
Bottom left of your screen, it's falling off the screen a
Oh,
little
yeah,
bit.
okay, yeah. Okay, so it's this 5 kilometer. Okay, there we go. So you've got a legend, you've got a scale bar, yeah, and then your coordinates. Not quite as bells and whistles as something like QGIS, but you know, produces a reasonable map for putting into a report, etc. Thanks.
Astrid, yeah, thanks for joining us today. And it's always nice to have your questions, always nice probing questions. This time it's a question about customization and whether it's possible to customize colors, for example, of sites. If she's having a little bit of a difficulty distinguishing between a yellow layer and a yellow dot indicating a site.
Yeah, so at the moment, no, we can't customize the color of the sites. We had different colors initially, and we decided on this sort of yellow with a dark background as being the most easily visible. But I can understand if you sort of, for example, have a river background, I mean a background layer that is also yellow, it might be harder to see. But what one can do then is decrease or increase the opacity, which then allows you to be able to distinguish the sites. So maybe we'll add that to our wish list. I'm not sure if from a development perspective it's feasible, but let's include it as a request for now. Thanks, Astrid.
Astrid seems happy with that. Yeah, the opacity slide is pretty useful for creating maps. And yeah, we just got to get that print map and export to JPEG functionality up and running. And then, yeah, we'll be good to go. All right, nothing more. Okay, another question from Mark Leroy in the chat. Given the color issue, so I think he's probably referring to the inflexibility in users adjusting colors. Has consideration for colorblind people been considered?
No, our bad, we haven't considered that, but yeah, I mean, if I hop onto the ARBIS, so ARBIS is a different system that we've been working on with Rwanda. And if I open up their map quickly, you'll see they've opted to use pins, you know, like on Google Earth, you get an actual pin. It won't necessarily help with the color blindness issue, but you can see their map looks like this, where you've got a pin drop reflecting each site. So, I mean, we as FBIS just decided that this was the one that seemed to work the best, but again, maybe we add that to our list of the option to change the color of the sites. I don't think that'll be too onerous. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, Helen. I mean, it's something that I think came up last week as well, and it's probably a pretty easy thing to implement, just to give a little bit of flexibility with the sites. That should overcome all of these issues in one go, I think. So we'll make a ticket for that. Eileen has a question about the legend. She was just, Helen, I wonder if maybe you could just walk us through the legend and how it's something that I didn't touch on in the tutorial, but the legend actually does give you a breakdown of the categories if you have a layer selected.
Sure. Okay, so once you turn on a layer, so in this case, let's turn on ecoregion level 1. On the bottom left here, where you see the L, this is the legend tab, or legend, I don't know, pop-up, which it's basically a scrolling legend, which gives you every single layer that's on. So you can see the layers we have selected here are sites. So the legend includes, well, actually it doesn't include sites, because I mean sites, that's just, there's no legend linked to that, but rivers. So it gives you the rivers based on whether it's the DWA, not a DWS, 1 in 500,000 layers. And then at a finer scale, we zoom into the NGI 50K rivers. And then the other layer that we've turned on, let's try and move this a bit. The other layer we've turned on is obviously our ecoregion level 1. And so what you can see here, these are the legends with the color coding based on ecoregion level 1. So if you want to then, be able to see everything and print the map, the best is really to close that down and just, position your legend in a way that makes sense. Does that answer your question, Eileen? Was that the issue you were having? So that's really it on the legends. And if you click on the legend again, it should disappear. There we go.
Yep, Eileen says that answers her question.
Perfect.
Thanks, Helen. And I'm just wondering if it might be quite nice to add an option to expand the legend as well, because obviously the scale that it's at only shows a certain number of the categories, but someone might be interested in, having a more comprehensive legend in the image that they're exporting.
Yeah, I mean, I think whatever legend you turn on will come up here. So if we added in water management areas, I guess, you'll see it pops up. And again, it's shown in a sequence that you see it on your layer selector.
But just in terms of printing the map with the legend.
Yeah. Yeah, you
and
can't
seeing all
really,
the categories.
you can't make it smaller. Yeah, you can't. I see what you mean. Yeah, you can drag it. You can drag the legend, but you can't make this bigger. Yeah. I think it'll become a bit tricky when you've got like a whole lot of layers turned on, but obviously that's up to the user then to sort of prioritize what they're going to turn on and turn off. And maybe even show visible would be a good one, because you don't necessarily need all the ecoregions if you're only focusing in on the Western Cape, for example. So maybe we can combine that in our ticket to be able to expand the legend box and also to only show that's what is visible on your screen. That might be useful. Thanks for that, guys.
And this is why these sessions are so helpful for us as well as hopefully for you, because all these cool ideas and insights, things that we don't think about. So yeah, just sort of thank you for these inputs. We have a few more questions coming through in the chat. Let's jump to Mark Leroy he's got a hand up, and then we'll pick it up in the chat after that.
Yeah, just a quick one around the catalyst and the legend. Sites, as far as I can recall from, I think, the first session, have numerous attributes, whether it's verified, unverified, and the different types of data that's available. So if I'm looking at wanting to have a picture of where there's sort of fish or SAS data, for example, as differences, would that be able to be captured and also capture the legend, so I can actually have 2 colors for the sites? Thanks.
Not sure I understand it 100%, but at the moment you can, the sites are only 1 color. That's the way it is at the moment. We have on our wish list to be able to color code them differently. Maybe you can just expand a bit, Mark, so that I get what you're asking 100%.
So just if, for example, in the attribute table of the sites, if there's more than 1 category for the data, let's say you've got sites that have got fish data and sites that have got insect data, SAS data, for example, and I want to see the differences where those are in my map that I'm looking at. So the map that's open now, let's say half the sites have got fish data and half the sites have got SAS data, and I want to be able to visually see them as different sites. Would it be possible to color code them as 2 different colors and therefore have that on the legend as well, so that the green sites will be fish and the yellow sites will be SAS, for example? Thanks.
Yeah, so you get, thanks, I understand now. So in FBIS, you've got some sites which are only fish sites, and you've got some sites which have had fish, inverts, and algae recorded at them. So some sites indeed have all three biodiversity modules, or might even have all five, although some of these are not necessarily likely because these were river focused, whereas these are not necessarily river focused. At the moment, if you just didn't select any biodiversity data and you just asked for all the sites back, they are all just one color. And to be able to color code them, depending on whether it's fish or invert or crab or frog or odonate adult data, is likely to be problematic because some sites only have fish data and other sites have all three. And bearing in mind that these modules are also going to be expanding. By the end of probably in 3 months, we'll have plants here. Then we're hoping to include birds, water birds, maybe even, you know, some mammals, freshwater mammals like otters and what have you. But I see what you mean in terms of the value of it, but at the moment you can't. But a kind of a workaround is to be able to see using the dashboards, which is going to be one of the things we'll dive into next week, where you actually can see more details based on each of the modules. So you'll see out of all of our 570,000 biodiversity records, 60,000 are fish, 360,000 are invertebrates, etc., etc. And you can zoom into that in a more detailed way by going into the dashboards, and that will be next week's session. What you can do as well, if you just wanted to see the fish sites, you would apply the fish filter, and then you would only return the 60,000 records or sites where there was fish data. Similarly, you could apply the invertebrate icon, activate that, and then you would only get the 360,000 records. And then what you are able to do is to select more than one module to see where the sites are, which might have fish, invertebrate, and algae data. And you do that by going Shift, click, and it'll highlight the second one. So now we should see only those sites where there was both fish records as well as invertebrate records. And then if you add in algae, this was not working 100%, but I'm going to show it to you regardless, because I asked for this functionality, because in some instances you want to be able to zoom in on sites that have fish, in this case, invertebrates and algae. You can see there's now only 2,300 odd sites, records, and only 13 sites actually have data that include those three biodiversity modules. Okay, I think I'll leave it there. Hopefully I've addressed your question adequately, Mark.
I have a quick follow-up.
Sure.
With the filters here, are they and filters or all filters? So am I looking at fish or invertebrates or fish and invertebrates when I'm looking at that filter? Just as a clarity, thanks.
Yeah, very, very important question. So at the moment, when you look within a biodiversity module, it's and. So in this case, I'm asking for data that's got fish and inverts and algae. Okay. But if I want to work between filters and I want fish data, okay, and I want it only for one catchment or one water management area. Let me just make my thing a bit bigger. So say I want it just for the Limpopo. That's an and, okay? So I want fish data in the Limpopo catchment, and that allows you to select the spatial framework and only fish data. And the same, for example, if you wanted conservation status, etc., etc. There is probably a limit as to how many filters can be interacted at the same time. It might kind of bomb the system, but for now we seem to have not yet broken the system. But feel free to to interrogate it, and if you have issues, let us know. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. We just can't seem to hold ourselves back from the biodiversity data, Helen. But yeah, just to mention that, don't be too overwhelmed as we start going into these, looking at how to query the different biodiversity modules, because there are going to be focus sessions on that, and on how to interpret the outputs in some of the upcoming sessions. So, all right, we've got about 10 minutes left of this, and I think let's try and smash through some of the questions that have built up in the chat. We've got a question from Ollie Cowan at EWT, asking whether there are different base map options, and also asking if it's possible to toggle on and off place labels, for example, like as one would do on Google Earth.
Great, thanks for that. So this was covered in the first session. So I do encourage everyone to jump in and read and listen to the tutorials. But the base maps can be changed. This last icon on the bottom of this side menu bar is change the base map. And we have the default is the Bing satellite hybrid, but it can be changed to terrain. And it can be changed to topography, aerial photograph, and then just a plain black and white. If you're doing this zoomed in, obviously the rendering takes a little bit of time, but once it's cached on your system, it's fairly quick. So those are the 5 base maps that we serve at the moment. And what was the second part of the question, Jim?
Can you turn on and off place names? Yeah, and I guess that's just a quick answer. That's not possible at this stage, just because those are are tied to the base map itself, as far as I know.
Yeah, 100%. So we're relying on this Bing satellite, and obviously this is all an open source system. So these are all kind of open, freely available base maps that don't require huge costs. So you can't, for example, then go and remove Old Main Road. You've got to use it as it is. Okay, thanks.
It looks like Mandy Ace has been exploring the map and the layers, and she's just wondering what to do if she's exploring, it looks like she's turned on the protected areas layer. She's been exploring the map, but is struggling to access the attributes or the details of that layer.
Okay. So is it specifically protected areas, or are there a few different ones? I'm just going to turn on a few.
It sounds like protected areas.
Okay.
I'll put my hand up.
Cool. Go, Mans. How's it?
How's it?
So,
can I speak to that?
Yes, please do.
Sorry, it actually just was a protected area that wasn't there. I know that you're going to address that in the future training, but if there's an element that's missing, obviously useful to get that information from your side. Can we submit that via that feature request?
Okay, so if I
understand, just a small protected area that I saw wasn't highlighted there.
Okay, so yeah, that's actually a really good point to discuss. So we, as the FBIS team, are reliant on existing spatial layers that have been published and are generally curated by SANBI or DWS or what have you. So if there's a protected area that you know of that isn't coming up on the protected area map, then we're not really the right conduit for, because we can't update it our side. That has to be done at the upstream source. Do you know what I mean? So like if it's a Sanby layer, then it needs to be updated by liaison with Sanby or whoever created that layer, because we just really serve it. We don't keep it updated and modify it, because otherwise we would lose track of the original. So we need to go to the original source layer that it's updated there. But it's a very useful thing, because I'm sure it's at a local scale, there's probably a lot of missing polygons, you know, in probably several of the maps. So perhaps look at is it, Jim, do you know, is it Sanby where we got the protected area map?
Yeah, that was a while ago. I think it was from Sanby, but I can follow up on that.
Yeah. So maybe Mandy, just send us or we'll get a recording. We'll take a note from this meeting and we'll just chat to Nancy et al. And then see how we can, you know, how it's best to address that. But hopefully you understand we can't sort of revise it on FBIS without improving it on the original source spatial layer, because then they'll become out of sync.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, understood.
So we have a question from Erica van Rooij, who's been testing out the Draw a Polygon tool. And she wants to know if the legend box will show only the features that you selected in the polygon boundary.
Sorry, just, do you want to take that, Jim?
Yeah. So Helen, maybe you could just turn a layer on and draw a polygon around it and see what features are reflected in the legend, if it's just the intersect of the polygon and that layer, or if it's for all of the, for example, all the different protected areas or whatever.
So join, sorry, I'm not quite getting it. So what must I do? I must put on the protected.
I think if you, yep, if you can put any layer on really, and then just use the lasso tool to draw a polygon maybe around just some sites on one of those in one protected area.
Okay, so say if I draw a lasso, draw a polygon around this one. It's quite hard to get it exact.
Yeah, and I think what
yeah, I know exactly what sorry, who was the question from?
It was from Erica van Rooij.
Erica. So Erica, if I hear you right, what you'd like to know is what are the sites within this demarcated protected area, correct? So you'd like to use this almost as a cookie cutter for getting your sites.
No, sorry. I actually wanted to know if you would select the area, if you would draw a bigger polygon around a specific area, would it still show all of the protected areas of South Africa in your legend, or will it be limited to the 2 or 3 that you might have in your polygon?
Okay, the polygon, so the lasso, the polygon is specifically for sites, but let's see here if I just do these ones. And now we go and look at our legend. Let's have a look here. Ah, so that's what it's done, right?
Yes, it did it.
Oh, awesome. Gosh, I'm learning new things as well. It's fantastic. Okay, so that's really useful. Thank you. So, you know, what I was saying is it would be nice to just have the subset shown in the legend. Yeah, let's actually now, sorry guys, let's just, I think this is really useful for everybody. Let's rather now see if we applied a filter to like the Western Cape, you know, if we used, like if you were only interested in one catchment or one province, what am I looking for? So if we just selected a specific province, would that same, you know, rational way explain that then the protected areas that come back would only be those in the Western Cape? Okay, so let's now, you can see the filter's been applied. You can, I don't know why it's not, there we go, it's coming slowly. The Western Cape, and if we click on our filter, yeah, I think that's working, but let's do another test and just see if I undo that and I do eco-regions, because I know eco-regions better than I know protected areas. If we now put on the legend, we should only get those in, no. So the filter unfortunately doesn't just show those that are selected in the Western Cape, so that's not really working, but certainly the lasso did appear to work. That makes sense. Let's just try that again. So in an ideal world, we would only get the ecoregions that are coming, that are present in the Western Cape. And it looks like they're all still there. So yeah, it doesn't appear to work 100%, but we've made a note of the desire from the end users to be able to not see the exhaustive list of legends, but only those in your interest area. And we'll definitely ask our developers if there's a way to kind of make it more user-friendly. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Helen. So it looks like the questions are tailing off, but just to point out that Leo Quell and Oliver Cowan mentioned that the most up-to-date protected areas layer for South Africa is available from the DFFE, and they're actually updated quite regularly on the EGIS website. So that's super helpful. And yeah, we'll see what we can do to link there and keep that nice and refreshed, because it's obviously a very important layer for this kind of work. So thanks both.
Sorry, Jeremy, can I ask a quick question on that lasso, that layering?
Yes, is that
Go for it.
Hi, Ellen. Hi.
Yeah.
I just want to understand you. Is it possible to save that to your portfolio, like once you've lassoed it, and then go back later? I'm just thinking about for us who work in the same area all the time, to sort of highlight that specific area, and you know that it's always selected. Or is that something you can kind of do going forward rather than always having to filter every time?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. Thanks, Eileen. So at the moment, it's not possible, but we've in previous sessions had quite a lot of requests or suggestions that there's more power given to your profile. So if one did want to, you know, create a lasso control that then became part of your profile, you wouldn't have to redo it every time. So we'll definitely add that onto our wish list and see, you know, how feasible that is. But there's definitely a use case. Thanks for that. Perfect.
Great, thanks.
Bianca, your hand's up. I think. No, Bianca's hand's down. Any more questions on the chat, Jim?
No, that's it. That's it from the chat. And looks like it's 11 o'clock, so it's probably quite good timing to round things off.
Great. So yeah, wow, another nice session, lots of useful input. You know, we've developed FBIS within our organization and obviously chatting to a lot of stakeholders and end users, but it's only really once you guys start using it and, you know, practically trying to use it within your own workflows and for your own purposes that we really are going to drill down to some of the functionality and the bugs or the issues that we might have. So again, enormously grateful for you guys taking the time, you know, to just be here with us. And although these sessions are recorded, I think the benefit of being in the room, you know, at the meeting is actually, that's the 100% option as far as I'm concerned, both for you and for us as the team that are going to keep improving the system. So again, thanks from Jem and I, and our next session will be in this time next week, Wednesday, which will be exploring the dashboards. The first, a detailed session on the single site and multi-site dashboards from the biodiversity module perspective. Again, we'll do the same format as we have previously. So yeah, let's just give 1 minute for anyone else who might have a last burning question or comment. Feel free. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. Thanks, Casey. Thank you, everybody. Okay, then we'll sign off and we will be distributing the Zoom recording. Thanks again for being here. Cheers. Thanks, Daksha.